The sky over Earth burned in a deep red glow, painted by thousands of alien warships descending from orbit. The invasion had begun. Cities trembled under the roar of plasma cannons and the shriek of engines tearing through the atmosphere. The world that once belonged to humans was now under siege. On the flagship of the alien fleet stood General Vorkath, the most feared commander in the Zorlan Empire. His armor shimmered in dark silver tones, covered in alien glyphs that marked his victories on 100 conquered worlds. He had never known defeat, and he had never shown mercy. Vorkath's yellow eyes studied the burning cities below. He saw the explosions tearing through skyscrapers and the rivers of fire spreading across the land. His fleet followed his every command without question. To him, humans were only another primitive species standing in the Empire's path. His reports said they were emotional, unpredictable, and weak, a species ruled by feelings instead of logic. He felt nothing but cold efficiency as he ordered his soldiers to cleanse the planet. "Destroy all resistance," he commanded in a low, calm voice. "Leave nothing behind." His officers obeyed instantly, and the destruction began. Below, the human armies fought back with everything they had. Jets screamed across the sky, firing missiles that barely scratched the alien shields. Tanks rolled through streets filled with rubble, trying to defend what was left of their world. But they were hopelessly outmatched. Alien drones swarmed like insects, cutting through defenses in minutes. The sound of war filled the air, metal grinding, people screaming, buildings collapsing. It was not a battle. It was extermination. Vorkath stood still, his hands clasped behind his back, his sharp eyes scanning the chaos through the viewing screen. The command bridge was silent except for the soft hum of alien machinery. His second-in-command, Commander Saren, reported in a cold tone, "Human resistance is collapsing in Sector 7. Their military has fallen. Total victory is near." Vorkath nodded slowly. "Good," he said. "End it quickly." His voice carried no emotion, no hesitation. He was bred for war. He was the Empire's perfect weapon. But then, as the transmission from the surface continued, something unexpected appeared on the screen. The camera drone showed the ruins of a city, streets on fire, buildings in ashes. Amid the smoke and debris, a human woman was crawling on the ground, holding a small child in her arms. The child wasn't moving. The woman's face was covered in dust and tears, her body shaking as she cried out in pain. Around her, alien soldiers marched past, ignoring her. She wasn't a threat. She was already broken. But still, she refused to move. Even when fire and debris fell around her, she stayed there, whispering something to her child, clutching the small body tightly against her chest. Vorkath stared at the image. Something inside him shifted, a strange, silent pull deep within his chest. He couldn't explain it. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pity. It was something else, something unfamiliar and uncomfortable. He had seen billions die before, and it had never affected him. But this was different. He zoomed the screen closer, watching as the woman lifted her head toward the sky, her tears glimmering in the red light of the burning clouds. She screamed something, her voice lost to the static of the transmission, but the emotion in it was unmistakable. Grief, love, defiance. For a long moment, the alien general said nothing. The crew waited for his next command, assuming he was analyzing tactical data. But Vorkath wasn't looking at the battle anymore. He was staring at the woman's face, at the tears falling down her cheeks. Those tears confused him. His species did not cry. They had evolved beyond such displays of weakness, or so they believed. Yet watching this fragile creature sob over her lost child, Vorkath felt a strange pressure in his chest, like a weight pressing against his armored heart. Commander Saren's voice broke the silence. "General, should we proceed with orbital cleansing?" Vorkath blinked, still watching the screen. He should have said yes. It was the logical choice. The mission required total destruction, but the words wouldn't come out. Instead, he found himself whispering something no one expected. "Hold fire." The bridge went quiet. Dozens of alien officers turned their heads toward him in confusion. Serene frowned, unsure if he heard correctly. "General?" he asked again, his tone uncertain. "Did you say—" "Hold fire?" Vorkath's jaw tightened. He repeated the order, louder this time. "Hold fire!" "Cease orbital bombardment." The silence grew heavy. For the first time in his long career, Vorkath hesitated during victory. His officers exchanged nervous glances, uncertain of what to do. Saren took a step forward. Sir, this goes against command protocol. The council demanded complete eradication of human resistance. Vorkath didn't respond immediately. His gaze stayed locked on the image of the woman below, who was now motionless, holding her child close as flames surrounded her. The sound of the distant bombardments echoed in his mind like thunder. He felt something he hadn't felt in centuries: doubt. What if they were wrong? What if these creatures weren't weak, but something else entirely? He turned away from the screen and looked at the stars beyond the glass, his mind racing. He thought about all the worlds he had conquered, all the species he had erased in the name of order. None of them had cried like this. None of them had fought with such heart, even when they had already lost everything. The humans' emotions, their tears, their pain, it wasn't weakness. It was strength, a strength his own people had long forgotten. Vorkath closed his eyes and took a deep breath, the sound mechanical through his breathing mask. "Stand by," he said softly. "No further attacks until my command." His officers hesitated, unsure whether to question him or obey. Finally, Saren nodded reluctantly and relayed the order to the fleet. For the first time in history, the Zorlan warfleet paused during an invasion. The guns went silent. The skies stopped burning. The earth, broken and bleeding, took a breath of uneasy calm. Vorkath remained still, staring out the window, lost in thoughts he couldn't control. His heart felt heavy, his mind restless. What had he just done? Why had he stopped? A general who questioned his mission was a danger to the Empire, yet something deep inside told him this moment mattered. Somewhere, beneath the armor and battle instincts, a spark of something ancient flickered: compassion. As the fires on Earth dimmed in the distance, Vorkath whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, "Why do they cry?" He didn't realize that question would change everything, not just for him, but for his entire species. The silence of space surrounded him, filled with unanswered questions. And for the first time in his long life, the great alien general felt truly human. The alien fleet floated silently above Earth, their dark hulls glowing faintly under the planet's burning clouds. It was strange. For the first time since the invasion began, there was no sound of explosions, no thunder of orbital fire. The silence made every officer on the bridge uneasy. Commander Saren stood stiffly behind General Vorkath, his claws gripping the railing as if holding back words he wanted to shout. The crew watched their leader in confusion. Vorkath had not moved for several minutes. His sharp eyes stayed fixed on the screen showing the damaged city below, now quiet except for flickering flames. Finally, Saren broke the silence. "General, we have received a transmission from the High Command. They demand a report on your sudden ceasefire." Vorkath didn't answer immediately. His thoughts were still tangled with the image of the crying woman he had seen earlier. The memory played again and again in his mind, the way she held the child, the way she refused to abandon hope. It made no tactical sense. It defied every law of war he knew, and yet it disturbed him deeply. "Transmit the message," Vorkath said at last, his voice calm but distant. A hologram flickered to life in the center of the bridge. 3 alien figures with glowing eyes and long, regal robes. The High Command. The lead counselor spoke sharply. "General Vorkath, your actions are unacceptable. You were ordered to complete planetary cleansing. Why has your fleet halted?" Vorkath stood tall, his expression unreadable. "Temporary assessment," he replied. "There are factors I need to evaluate before final destruction." The counselor narrowed his glowing eyes. "Factors? You are a soldier, not a philosopher. The humans must be eliminated. They are unpredictable and dangerous. Continue the operation immediately." Vorkath's jaw tightened, but he didn't reply. The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving behind a heavy silence. Saren turned toward him. "You heard them, General. They expect full compliance. If we delay any longer, the Council will send enforcers." Vorkath looked at him slowly. "And if we obey blindly, Saren, what separates us from machines?" The question caught his second-in-command off guard. Saren's eyes narrowed. "We are warriors. Our purpose is conquest, not doubt." Vorkath said nothing. He turned away, walking toward the observation window. From there, he could see the blue planet turning below them, scarred and burning. "They fight even when they know they will lose," he said quietly. "They protect one another even when there is no hope of survival." "Why?" Saren frowned. "Because they are weak. Their emotions drive them to irrational behavior." Vorkath's claws tapped the metal surface of the window frame. "Weakness," he whispered as if testing the word. Or something else. The bridge grew tense. No one spoke. The crew pretended to focus on their consoles, but every ear was listening. Saren's voice hardened. "General, you're letting sentiment cloud your judgment. These creatures are beneath us. Their tears mean nothing. If you hesitate, you endanger the entire fleet." Vorkath turned to face him, his eyes glowing faintly gold. "I have seen countless species surrender, Saren. I have watched warriors beg for mercy, kings kneel to save their own lives. But I have never seen a mother choose to die beside her child instead of running. Tell me, does that sound weak to you?" Saren said nothing. His face twitched with irritation, but deep down even he could not find an easy answer. After a moment he snapped, "If you will not act, General, I will contact the Council myself." Vorkath's voice dropped low, sharp like a blade. "You will do nothing until I give the order." The authority in his tone silenced the entire room. Even Saren froze, his pride crushed under the weight of the command. Vorkath looked back at the planet again. His mind was a storm. He had always believed emotions were a disease, something that made species weak. Yet what he had seen on Earth made him question everything. Maybe emotion was not weakness but power. Maybe that was why humanity had survived so many wars, why they never surrendered. He needed answers. "Prepare a recon probe," he ordered. "I want full scans of human population zones. I want to understand how they think, how they survive, how they endure." Saren looked shocked. "General, with respect, that's not our mission. We are conquerors, not scholars." Vorkath's eyes burned brighter. "That's an order, Commander." Saren bowed his head stiffly, frustration visible in every movement. "As you command," he said, then stormed out of the bridge, his footsteps echoing through the metallic corridor. When the door closed, the silence returned. The crew began executing the new command, launching small silver probes from the lower hangars. They streaked through the atmosphere, scanning the wreckage of human cities, capturing sounds, faces, and emotions. Each feed streamed back to the command bridge. Vorkath stood alone watching the recordings. He saw a group of soldiers carrying their wounded, refusing to abandon them even when alien drones fired from above. He saw people digging through rubble to pull out strangers they didn't even know. He saw children giving water to each other when supplies ran out. And in every scene there were tears, not just of pain, but of love, of courage, of something he had never felt before. He felt a strange ache in his chest again. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was guilt. Guilt for what he had done to them. For every life lost because of his commands. He pressed his clawed hand against his armor, feeling the dull thump of his heart beneath it. His voice was barely a whisper. "Why do they fight like this? What drives them?" A voice answered from behind. One of the younger officers, hesitant but brave enough to speak, said softly, "Perhaps, General. They fight because they have something worth losing." Vorkath turned to look at the young officer. The alien's eyes glowed faintly blue, nervous but sincere. Vorkath said nothing but gave a small nod. The thought stayed in his mind, echoing louder with each passing second. Hours later, another transmission came from the High Command, harsher this time. "Vorkath, you have disobeyed a direct order. Resume the planetary purge immediately or face removal from command." Vorkath stared at the message without replying. He felt the eyes of his crew on him, waiting for his decision. The man he used to be, the perfect general, would have obeyed instantly. But that man was fading. After a long silence, he said slowly, "We continue observing. Any commander who disagrees may leave the bridge." No one moved. They all felt the change in him, a shift that could destroy them all or save something greater. Vorkath turned back to the window, the reflection of fire dancing across his armor. For the first time in his life, he was no longer sure which side he belonged to. The night sky over Earth was no longer dark. It glowed with the reflection of alien warships, hovering like silent predators. The fires on the surface painted everything in orange and gold, making the cities look like burning scars on a wounded planet. From orbit, General Vorkath watched in silence, his golden eyes fixed on the holographic screens showing different human resistance zones. His mind was no longer the same. The once cold and merciless commander now found himself wondering. In one of the feeds, a small human resistance group fought desperately in the ruins of what was once New Chicago. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and yet they refused to give up. Their leader, a woman named Captain Raina Cole, stood out among them. She was covered in dust and blood, her uniform torn, but her voice never trembled. "We hold this line," she shouted to her team. "No one falls back." "Not while I'm still breathing." Vorkath leaned closer to the screen, intrigued. He had heard reports about this woman before, a former pilot turned ground commander. She had destroyed 2 alien drones with scavenged human weapons, something almost impossible. His analysts had marked her as a minor threat, not worth attention. But as he watched her move through the smoke, dragging a wounded soldier to safety while still firing at drones above, something stirred within him again. He felt that same strange pull, curiosity mixed with something like admiration. "Who is she?" he asked quietly. The young officer monitoring the feed replied, "Captain Raina Cole, leader of the resistance cell in the North American sector. Her unit has survived every engagement so far despite heavy losses." Vorkath nodded slowly. "She fights." "Differently." The officer hesitated before answering. "Yes, General. She fights for her people, not for victory." Vorkath's eyes flickered as if the words struck something inside him. For his kind, war was always about domination, control, resources, power. But for these humans, it seemed to be about something else. They fought not because they expected to win, but because they refused to surrender. It was illogical, and yet it fascinated him. Commander Saren entered the bridge, his expression cold. "General, the High Command demands an update. They suspect your loyalty." Vorkath didn't even look at him. "Tell them the operation continues as planned," he said calmly. Saren narrowed his eyes. "Does it?" Vorkath turned slowly, his voice low. "Do you question my command?" Saren stepped closer, lowering his voice so only the general could hear. "You are changing, Vorkath. I see it in your eyes. You are infected by their weakness. Emotions, pity, hesitation. They will destroy you." Vorkath didn't answer. He simply walked past him and stopped near the central holomap, where human resistance zones flickered in red. "I want full surveillance on Captain Cole's location," he ordered. "No interference, no engagement. Just watch." Saren clenched his fists. "You waste time studying them when we could finish this war in hours." Vorkath's voice grew sharp. "Then you will follow orders or be replaced." The entire bridge went silent. Saren glared at him, then turned away, muttering, "You're making a mistake, General. The Council won't tolerate this." He stormed out, the sound of his heavy steps echoing through the corridor. Vorkath turned back to the holographic feed, his eyes softening as he watched the human soldiers rest between battles. Raina sat beside a fire, her face tired but calm. She looked at her soldiers, a mix of men and women, some injured, some barely holding on, and smiled weakly. "You did good today," she said. "We lost ground, but we're still alive. That's something they can't take from us." Her words hit him like a pulse through his armor. "Still alive. That's something they can't take from us." He repeated those words silently. His kind never spoke like that. The Zorlan Empire didn't talk about life, only conquest and victory. Yet these humans seemed to draw power from something invisible, something stronger than logic. Hours passed, and Vorkath kept watching. The more he observed, the more he began to understand the small things. How humans comforted each other when someone cried, how they shared the last drop of water, how they laughed even in pain. He didn't understand it, but it made his chest ache. He remembered the woman from before, the one who died holding her child, and wondered if this same strength existed in all of them. One of the alien soldiers approached him. "General, the probes have gathered emotional frequency data from human communications. Their voices carry strange energy patterns when they express grief or hope. It's unlike anything recorded before." Vorkath's curiosity deepened. "Show me." The data appeared as glowing waves of color on the screen, blue and gold patterns pulsing softly. The machine translated them into sound, and suddenly, the bridge filled with human voices. Cries, whispers, prayers. Vorkath closed his eyes as he listened. "Please, not my family. We're still here. Don't give up." The sounds were painful, beautiful, and haunting all at once. Her second-in-command entered quietly. "Captain?" "The world's starting to rebuild. People are saying the invasion stopped because of someone up there. Some are calling it the light of redemption." Raina looked at Vorkath's resting face, a faint smile touching her lips. "They're right," she whispered. But the light wasn't in the sky. It was in him. As days turned into weeks, Vorkath began to heal. Humans and aliens who had deserted the Empire started to gather around him. Together they began to form something new, a fragile alliance built on respect, not conquest, and so, the alien general who once came to destroy Earth became its guardian, a symbol of what could be when hatred gives way to understanding. High above, in the rebuilt skies, human children would look up at the stars, at the place where the Jatar had fallen, and their parents would tell them the story of the alien who saw human tears and surrendered. And somewhere beyond those same stars, the Empire watched, waiting. The peace was fragile. The next storm was coming, but this time humanity would not face it alone. General Vorkath stood at the center, unmoving, like a stone in a storm. "Activate full planetary shield," he ordered. "Redirect all reactor output to the defense grid. No strike reaches the surface." "Yes, General." The massive alien ship hummed as energy surged through its veins, forming a glowing barrier around Earth, a shimmering blue dome visible from orbit. Below, humans watched the sky as lines of light rippled across the heavens. Children pointed. Soldiers stopped firing. For the first time in the war, the burning sky looked beautiful, but above, death was coming. The voice of Arch-Commander Dran-Ul boomed across the comms. "Vorkath, you disgrace your kind. You shield these vermin. You betray your bloodline?" Vorkath replied coldly. "If protecting life is betrayal, then I accept it." Dran-Ul's voice turned into a growl. "Then you will die with them." And then, the heavens opened fire. The execution fleet unleashed a barrage of plasma storms and antimatter blasts. Each impact shook the shield like an earthquake. The bridge shuddered. Sparks flew from the consoles. One officer screamed as an explosion threw him across the room. "Shields down to 60%. Another shouted. Vorkath gritted his teeth. "Reinforce the upper arc. Focus power on the northern hemisphere." The ship trembled again, and for a moment it seemed like the barrier might collapse. On Earth, Captain Raina Cole and her team watched the glowing shield flicker and pulse. "What's happening?" one of her soldiers whispered. Raina looked up at the sky, feeling something deep inside her, a strange, impossible connection. "Someone's fighting for us," she said quietly. "Someone up there is keeping us alive." She didn't know who, but she could feel it. Back in orbit, the battle grew desperate. The execution fleet pressed harder. Hundreds of alien ships swarmed toward Jatar, firing relentlessly. Multiple hull breaches on lower decks. A lieutenant shouted. "We've lost 3 gun batteries." "Hold formation," Vorkath commanded. No one abandons their post. "If we fall protecting something that deserves to live." Commander Saren, bleeding but alive, stumbled back onto the bridge. "You can't win this," he shouted over the noise. "They'll crush us." Vorkath turned toward him, eyes blazing with fierce calm. "Then let them try." He slammed his clawed hand onto the control console, overriding the command protocols. The massive ship's main cannon charged, glowing with pure white energy. The deck vibrated as the cannon's core aligned. "Target the lead dreadnought," Vorkath said. The young officer hesitated. "General, that's suicide." "Firing the core will overload our systems," Vorkath interrupted, his voice deep and steady. "Do it." The Jatar fired. A beam of white-hot energy cut through the void, slicing straight through the center of the execution fleet's formation. One of the lead dreadnoughts exploded in a brilliant flash, its debris scattering like burning stars. The shockwave ripped through nearby vessels, tearing them apart. The crew cheered, but only for a moment. "Core overheating." Someone shouted. "We're losing power." The lights dimmed. Smoke filled the air. The shield around Earth began to flicker again, weaker and weaker. Vorkath staggered but refused to fall. His armor was cracked, his breathing heavy. "Divert life support to shields," he said. The officer turned to him, eyes wide. "That will kill everyone on board." Vorkath's voice softened. "Better us than them." He stepped forward, looking out the window at the blue planet below, so fragile, so alive. He thought of the crying mother, the brave soldiers, and the human woman who refused to give up. He thought of everything they were, everything his people had lost. He closed his eyes and whispered, "For them." The ship's systems screamed as power rerouted. The shield brightened once again, holding steady against the storm. The alien fleet's bombardment weakened. Confusion spread through their ranks. Dranul's voice returned, furious. "You would die for them? For these insects?" Vorkath smiled faintly, his voice barely a whisper. "Not insects. Life." and with one final surge of energy, the Jatar's core exploded in blinding light. The shockwave spread across orbit, disabling half of the execution fleet's ships. From Earth, humans watched the sky erupt, not with fire, but with light. A burning star flared above the planet, then faded into silence. Reyna stared at the sky, tears running down her face. "Whoever you were," she whispered, "you saved us." Around her, survivors emerged from bunkers and ruins, staring at the calm heavens. The war was over. The invaders had vanished. But among the drifting debris in orbit, a single escape pod floated silently, its beacon faint, its systems damaged. Inside, an alien heart still beat weakly. General Vorkath had survived. The universe had changed, and so had he. And far below, on a recovering Earth, humanity would soon learn that their protector was still watching from the stars. The escape pod drifted through the cold void, silent and broken. Its metal shell was scorched, its systems flickering weakly. Inside, General Vorkath lay unconscious, his armor cracked and darkened from the explosion. Every breath he took was shallow, ragged. Around him floated fragments of what was once his flagship, the Jatar, the ship that had shielded an entire planet. For hours, nothing moved. Then, faintly, a signal blinked on his console. A distress beacon automatically triggered. Somewhere far below, human satellites detected it. On Earth, deep within the ruins of New Chicago, Captain Reyna Cole sat at a cracked communications table. Her team had finally managed to restore a small portion of their old radar grid. Most of the world's military command was gone, but small groups like hers had become the new eyes of the planet. "Captain," said one of her techs, excitement in his voice, "we're getting something from orbit. A pod, alien tech, but not like the others. It's transmitting a weak signal. No attack pattern." Reyna frowned. "Can you locate it?" "Somewhere above the Atlantic. Slowly descending. Looks like re-entry." Reyna stood up, heart pounding. She didn't know why, but something deep inside told her this was connected to the strange light that had saved them. "Prepare the scout ships," she ordered. "We're going to find out who, or what, fell from the sky." Hours later, in the dark pre-dawn light, her small aircraft skimmed over the ocean's surface. Flames marked the crash site ahead. The pod had landed hard, smoke rising from the wreck. The team approached cautiously, weapons ready. The pod door hissed open, and inside they saw him, an alien, enormous, wounded, his armor cracked open, revealing strange silver blood. His face was fierce but peaceful, unlike any soldier they had faced before. One of Reyna's soldiers raised his weapon, but she raised her hand sharply. Wait, something in her chest told her not to shoot. This wasn't an enemy. Not this one. She stepped closer, and as the alien's eyes opened, she saw something unexpected. Not hatred, not rage, but exhaustion and sorrow. Vorkath blinked slowly, trying to focus. His voice, deep but weak, filled the air. "You are human?" Reyna nodded carefully. "Yes, and you're the one who stopped them, aren't you?" He stared at her, the recognition dawning. "Captain Reyna Cole, I watched you fight." Her breath caught. "You watched us?" He nodded slowly. "You fought with heart." "You reminded me what it means to protect, not destroy." The soldiers exchanged confused looks, unsure if this was real or some trick. But Reyna knelt beside him. "You saved us, didn't you?" "The shield, the light, that was you." Vorkath's gaze drifted toward the rising sun. "Your people cry, yet never break." "I saw that. I could not kill such spirit." For a moment no one spoke. Only the wind moved, carrying the faint sound of the ocean. Then, from the distance, one of the soldiers shouted, "Captain!" Multiple signals approaching. Alien dropships. Reyna spun around, her heart pounding. Through the smoke, sleek black shapes appeared on the horizon. The Empire had come to finish what the execution fleet started, and to eliminate the traitor who had defied them. Vorkath struggled to stand, but his body failed him. Reyna grabbed his arm, helping him up. "You can't fight like this!" He looked at her, pain flashing in his golden eyes. "Then let me die protecting what I began." "No," she said firmly. "You're not dying today." She turned to her team. "Move him. Get him to the transport!" They dragged the wounded general toward the ship as plasma blasts tore through the air. Explosions erupted behind them. The humans fired back, trying to buy time. As they reached the transport, Vorkath pressed a device into Reyna's hand, a small, glowing sphere. "This is my command key," he said. "It holds the codes to my fleet. Use it to defend your world." Reyna stared at him. "Why are you giving me this?" His breathing grew shallow. "Because I believe you will not misuse it." Then he closed his eyes, slipping into unconsciousness. Reyna held the glowing sphere tightly, watching the sky as alien ships circled overhead. She climbed into the transport and shouted, "Get us out of here!" The engines roared. The small human craft shot across the ocean, chased by alien fighters. Reyna looked back through the window, watching the rising smoke and the dying dawn. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this moment would change everything. The human ship dove into the clouds, disappearing from radar. The alien pursuers lost track. Hours later, inside a hidden resistance base deep underground, Reyna watched over the sleeping alien general. He was hooked to medical systems adapted from alien tech salvaged from the war he himself had stopped. The human city of New Chicago was dying. Smoke rose from the shattered skyline, twisting up into the clouds where alien warships hovered like shadows of death. The streets were filled with fire, crumbling metal, and the faint echoes of people still fighting for a world already lost. The resistance was cornered, trapped in the ruins, and the last surviving humans gathered in a half-destroyed subway station beneath the city. Captain Reyna Cole stood at the entrance, holding her rifle, her eyes tired but fierce. Around her, people whispered prayers and promises to loved ones they might never see again. High above, in orbit, General Vorkath stood inside his command chamber, watching the situation unfold on his screens. His officers were tense. Commander Saren stood beside him, his voice sharp and full of anger. "The human resistance has gathered in one place. This is our chance to finish them, General. One orbital strike and it's over." Vorkath didn't respond right away. His gaze lingered on the holographic image of Reyna's team. Civilians, soldiers, wounded survivors, all standing together, refusing to flee. He could see Reyna helping a young boy reload his weapon, her hands trembling from exhaustion. Every instinct in him screamed to act like the warrior he had always been, to finish the mission and end this chaos. But something deep within him pushed back. The same feeling he had felt when he first saw the woman crying over her child returned stronger than ever. "They know they can't win," Vorkath said quietly. "And yet they stay." Saren stepped forward, his tone sharp. "Because they're fools." "Their defiance means nothing. They will all die, and their tears will vanish like smoke." "Why hesitate?" Vorkath looked at him, his eyes glowing gold beneath his heavy brow. "You don't see it, do you? They are not fighting to win. They are fighting to protect one another." Saren's claws twitched in anger. "Enough of this sentiment, General. You've grown weak. The High Command already doubts you. If you do not order the strike, I will." Vorkath turned slowly, his voice cold and commanding. "You will do nothing unless I give the order." The bridge went silent. The crew watched in fear as the two commanders faced each other, one driven by duty, the other by something that felt almost human. Saren sneered. "You've lost your purpose. The great Vorkath, conqueror of 9 worlds, now stops for human tears. I never thought I'd live to see the day." Vorkath ignored the insult. His eyes returned to the screen, where Reyna and her people prepared for their final stand. The humans were running out of ammunition, food, and time, but they refused to surrender. He saw one of the wounded soldiers fall, and Reyna dropped her weapon to pull him back to cover. She didn't know the alien general watching her from space was questioning everything he'd ever believed. "Prepare to fire," Saren ordered the gunnery crew, ignoring the general's silence. The officers hesitated. "That is not your command, Commander," one of them said nervously. Saren's voice roared.
"Then I make it mine!"
He slammed his clawed hand on the console, activating the orbital weapon controls. The ship's engines hummed, and a blinding light began to form at the front of the warship. The massive plasma cannon charged, ready to vaporize the entire city in one blast. Vorkath's eyes widened in disbelief.
"Saren, stop this madness!"
Saren turned toward him, his voice dripping with rage. "If you will not destroy them, I will. The Empire does not need a general who feels pity for its enemies." Without thinking, Vorkath lunged forward, grabbing Saren by the armor and slamming him against the control panel. Sparks flew from the impact. The crew gasped, too afraid to move. Saren snarled and swung his arm, striking Vorkath across the face. The general staggered back, then struck him again, knocking the commander to the floor. "Deactivate the cannon!" Vorkath shouted to the crew. They obeyed instantly, shutting down the weapon's power core. The bright light faded, leaving the ship in dim silence. Saren struggled to his feet, breathing heavily, blood dripping from his mouth. "You're finished, Vorkath," he hissed. "The council will see this as treason." Vorkath's expression hardened. "If compassion is treason, then I accept the charge." Saren's eyes burned with hatred. "You've doomed us all for these creatures. They would kill you without hesitation." Vorkath stepped closer, his voice calm but heavy. "Maybe, but at least they remember what it means to care." "Can you say the same for us?" Before Saren could reply, the ship's alarms blared. "Incoming transmission from the council," an officer shouted. "They demand immediate explanation." Vorkath straightened his posture, wiping the blood from his jaw. "Tell them I will answer later," he said. "For now, I have made my decision." He turned toward the viewing window. The planet glowed beneath him, broken, bleeding, but still alive. He saw humans moving in the ruins, refusing to give up. It filled him with something he couldn't name. Maybe guilt, maybe admiration, maybe hope. "Set the fleet to standby," Vorkath commanded. "No more attacks on civilian sectors." The officers hesitated, but obeyed. Saren's voice came from behind him, bitter and cold. "You will regret this. When the council learns you disobeyed, they will strip you of everything. You will be hunted." Vorkath looked back at him with a quiet, distant expression. "Then let them come." He turned away, staring again at the burning world below. His reflection shimmered in the glass. The face of a warrior who no longer believed in war. Down on Earth in the ruins of New Chicago, Reyna and her team noticed the sudden silence in the skies. The bombardment had stopped. The alien drones that hovered above them pulled back and vanished into the clouds. Everyone looked up, confused and breathless. "Did they just stop?" one soldier whispered. Reyna didn't answer. Her heart raced as she stared at the empty sky. "No," she murmured. "Someone stopped them." Far above, Vorkath stood alone in the quiet of his bridge, his thoughts heavy and his command uncertain. He had just defied his entire empire for a species he was sent to destroy. He didn't know why he had done it, only that it felt right. But deep inside, he also knew this was not the end. The High Command would never forgive him. And soon, the real battle, the one for his own soul, was about to begin. Commander Saren, still bruised from their earlier fight, stepped forward from the shadows. His mouth curled into a cruel smile. "I warned you, Vorkath. Now they will send the execution fleet. They will burn this planet, and you with it." Vorkath turned toward him, eyes burning with resolve. "Then I will stand in their way." Saren sneered. "You can't stop them. You're one ship against an armada. Then this one ship will have to be enough." Without hesitation, Vorkath turned to his bridge crew. "Set defensive formation. Deploy energy shields around the planet. If the execution fleet enters orbit, we intercept." The officers looked at each other, afraid, uncertain. Some hesitated, but then one young lieutenant stepped forward and saluted. "I will follow your command, General. You spared those who could not fight. You showed us something greater than victory." One by one, others joined, slamming fists against their armor in silent unity. The noise echoed across the bridge. Saren stared at them in disbelief. "You're all traitors," he spat. "You'll die for him." Vorkath looked at him calmly. "Better to die for honor than live without a soul." Down on Earth, Captain Reyna Cole and her people noticed the strange light spreading across the sky, a shimmering blue shield wrapping around the atmosphere. The bombardments had stopped completely now, and the drones that once hunted them were gone. The world held its breath. Reyna spoke softly, almost to herself. "Someone up there is protecting us." Her voice cracked with emotion. The others around her didn't know what to say. For the first time since the invasion began, the humans dared to hope. But in orbit, hope was fragile. The execution fleet was already on its way. Hundreds of warships were descending through hyperspace, each one carrying weapons capable of destroying continents. Vorkath stood alone in the dim light of the bridge, watching the stars flicker as new signals appeared on his radar. His officers looked to him for orders. "The Empire is coming," one whispered. Vorkath nodded slowly. "Then we hold the line." He could feel the weight of what was coming. Not just the battle, but the truth of what he had become. The alien general who once destroyed worlds was now defending one. because of a single human tear. He looked down at Earth one last time before the storm began. Somewhere below, a woman named Reyna was fighting to save her people. She didn't know his name. She didn't know he was risking everything for her species. But somehow that didn't matter. As the stars trembled and the execution fleet arrived, Vorkath whispered to himself, "Let them come. This planet will not fall while I still breathe." And then the sky above Earth began to burn again. But this time, the fire was not for conquest. It was for redemption. You said the first shockwave hit the Jatar like thunder. Space around Earth exploded in flashes of red and gold as the execution fleet emerged from hyperspace. A monstrous wall of ships stretching across the stars like a swarm of metallic beasts. Their arrival sent ripples through the void, their weapons already charging with the power to erase continents in seconds. On the bridge, alarms screamed. Lights flickered. The crew scrambled to battle stations, fear and determination mixing in their eyes.